Hello everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the Desolation Sounds Podcast. My name is Stephen Hook, and for those unaware, this is a podcast celebrating everything to do within the world of alternative music, be that rock, punk, metal, or extreme metal. Usually we do a lot about the news, current releases, and just reviews from the current year, but I decided to do something a little bit different, just sort of look at the sum of the parts of the band Gallows. So my original plan for this was to have it out when they celebrated 10 years of Great Britain, but various things got in the way, so it's been pushed back by some time. Finally got right into it now, though. Basically, what we're going to do is each member of the band, the hardcore Watford-based band Gallows, have all featured in at least one side project, and I'm excluding, I think his name was Paul Lavature, who was the guitarist before Steph, but before Orchestra of Wolves came out as well. So I think he was part of some demos. Guitar parts for Orchestra got handled by Lags on both sides, so I'm sorry, he's not included. I also don't think he's done anything musically since leaving Gallows, but there we go. But each major member of Gallows, that's Frank, Stu, Lags, Lee, and Wade. Why do I feel like I've forgotten someone? And Steph. Sorry, Steph. Each and every one of them have either got a side project or a new band, and we're going to look at an album from each boy. So here we go. Kind of them in release order for some reason. I probably had a good reason at the time, but let's start with the hard as nails looking bassist Stu Gili-Ross. His band is called Spycatcher, and we're going to look at their debut album Honesty. It came out in 2011. They are also based in Watford, along with Stu and most of Gallows. They play a very eclectic version of alternative rock, and they are made up, as well as obviously Gallows bassist Stu, they are made up of members of Cry for Silence and Haunts, two, I guess you can call them underground UK bands from back in the day. Like I said, they are an unexpectedly eclectic, that's really difficult, rendition of alternative rock, often led by an electric organ. And yeah, they're quite chilled and quite laid back musically. The song Reason to Breathe In is damn near hypnotizing. The drum beat, along with vocalist Steve Sears wailing over the top of everything, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, you do sort of like lose yourself in the song, which is, you know, quite a cool thing if you're into that kind of thing. I enjoyed it. I'll get into more in a bit, but I really enjoy Spycatcher. And like I said, yeah, it's quite chilled. It's not quite to the level of, say, post-rock or folk rock. And there is a bit of folk rock in Honesty, just in like little drips and drabs, but it's more of like a summer rock kind of thing. So think of the self-titled Paramore record, Gold Key, which I think is a bit of a cop-out because Steve Sears and Lags are both in that as well. But now self-titled Paramore, Gold Key, Spanish love songs, more like, it's like, it's hard to describe. It is like still upbeat, but still quite calm and collected, and it's like, you know, enjoyable on when everything's nice and warm and sunny like it is right now. Apparently it's 20 degrees outside, fuck that. It is absolutely criminal, if nothing else from this album, it is absolutely criminal that the song Remember Where You Were When Michael Jackson Died is not bigger and is not a more well-known song by just the general musical population. It has got a banging riff in there. The electronic organ leads the charge, and it does so freaking well. The vocal melodies on the chorus as well just make your heart flutter if you have one. This song just slams. It is so fucking good. Don't Like People as well is a really good song. It's perhaps the most relatable song anyone has ever written, ever. Excuse me. It is equal parts social cynicism and equal parts social anxiety, which your boy's all about that life. And Livewire as well is up there. It is a little bit more up-tempo than the rest of the album, and it gives Tom and Drew a chance to flex their guitar muscles, and they do very, very well. Compared to, so Spycatcher, Honestly, is one of the few bands that actually got a follow-up, or few albums that got a follow-up, I should say, from what we're going to look at today. The follow-up was called Lies, and in comparison, because I listened to Lies years and years ago, and that's put me onto Spycatcher proper. And like I said, comparatively, Honesty is a little bit safe. The blend of indie and folk mixed up with the alt rock is fascinating, but it's done to a much higher and better standard on the follow-up Lies, or Lies, because I fucking space it off weirdly. But like I said, if there was one band that I'm reviewing today that I could bring back for another album, it would 100% be Spycatcher. As far as I'm aware, they are. I'm not sure if they split up, but they are at least on hiatus. Lies came out 2014, which now was 5 years ago. So, everyone has got other things going on. So I don't know if we'll ever see a Spycatcher album again. It would be nice, but never mind. And like I said, for looking at Gallows, for me, Stu has always been the one that looks the most punk rock. The shaved hair, he's usually got quite a best way to describe it, quite a monotone dress sense. He's just very, he does look like he could rip you apart with his bare hands. So it is quite surprising that one of the more like chilled and laid back records associated with like the greater Gallows verse comes from him. And if nothing else, Spycatcher has, I know like the star of the show is meant to be Stu on this because it's, in terms of this special, it's his band. Nothing else, Spycatcher has introduced me to now one of my favourite vocalists in music. Steve Sears, I talked about him a minute ago. He's also in the band Gold Key. He was also the frontman of Cry for Silence, a, like I said, underground prog metal band back in the day. His range, the power he has in his vocal performances, he's got a golden set of lungs. I absolutely love Steve as a vocalist. And like I said, his work with Spycatcher, his work with Gold Keys, he deserves way more from the industry that he's put into. And I would happily say he is probably the most underrated vocalist in the UK, at least right now. I don't want to say of all time because people sort of get very antsy about that, but right now, superbly underrated. And yeah, like I said, if you go for Honesty first, it's better than going to Lies first, because I thought that in every single way, Lies is a lot better. It's more refined. The ideas that they experiment with in Honesty, they do, like I said, so much better to such a high standard on Lies. But Honesty is still a great record to go to. It's wonderful and laid back. Remember Where You Were When Michael Jackson Died is still a fucking brilliant song. If you're a fan of the Excerpts, Canterbury, or We Are the Ocean, that sort of like big, dramatic, easy listening alt rock, I'd recommend Spycatcher. Just good music in general. You're gonna find, try it again. You're gonna hear me say that if I can pronounce my words right. Good music a lot, but Honestly by Spycatcher came out in 2011, so even if you want to buy it physical, I'm sure you can find it on the cheap now anyways. Really great album. It's on Spotify. Fucking Lies isn't. Please fix that. But yeah, really fun album to start with, and definitely worth your time. Right then, next up, it is an album from our main boy himself. The boy in question is Frank Carter, and I've already done a Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes album for open mic, so I thought maybe not go for Modern Ruin, and I've got End of Suffering on my to listen list as we speak, so I figured I'd go with the other band that Frank made post leaving Gallows in 2011. He made a band called Pure Love, and so we can look at them. The album came out in 2013. It's called Anthems. They played a very indie garage rock version of alternative rock. Again, a lot of alt rock in their side projects. And yeah, it came in the midst of an internal conflict regarding the direction of Gallows. And the iconic frontman Frank formed Pure Love with the former Hope Conspiracy and the Suicide File guitarist Jim Carroll from them United States of Americaland. When Pure Love became a thing, Frank would leave Gallows and make Pure Love his full-time project around about the same month in 2011. I believe it was August. I think August was the last show they had with Frank. And soon after, they released their lead single from what would become Anthems, called Bury My Bones. And I remember at the time, really strongly wanting to like it. I remember Bury My Bones will be somewhat controversial when it initially came out all those years ago. Predominantly down to that opening lyric of "I'm so sick of singing about hate, it's never going to make a change." Even back then, with my musical naivety, it felt like a pot shot at Gallows and everything he had done, and rather undid everything he'd worked on prior. Years on, I don't quite feel like that anymore, or I don't feel like it was quite as dramatic as that. But I've listened to various interviews, particularly one with Lags he did for the That's Not Metal magazine, I think earlier last year. And from there and like other bits I've read here and there, it did sound like it was, or it's like indicated that there were some weird feelings when like his final performance, a lot of it came from the final performance with Gallows. He wore a Pure Love t-shirt, and then that open lyric, there must have been, or there was like a little bit of like weird feelings throughout the band, because not only are like Gallows a collection of friends, like in that magazine interview that Lags did, he even said that Thanksgiving a couple of years ago, or a couple of years previously, they happened to be out in the States, and Frank invited a lot of them over for like a UK Thanksgiving, but while still in America. So that was really cool. So to have like that's his fine performance, and I'm still singing about hate, it's never going to make a change. For Gallows that were made up of friends and literal family, it was a little bit on the weird side, and I can see why there was a lot of contention back then with regards to the new direction that Frank was going in. And yeah, even back then, I wanted so hard to like it, but because of that open lyric and the overall vibe of it, and let's face it, it wasn't Gallows. And I know if any of the members of Gallows broke off and made a band that was effectively Gallows 2.0, I'd hate it because it's not the actual Gallows itself, but I listen to music, I'm a musical fan, therefore I'm scum. How's it doing? So yeah, like I was saying before, Bury My Bones initially gave me a bit of skepticism surrounding the entire project. The song is lyrically quite cringe anyways, and in the grand scheme of things, I do think it's a bit of a dud compared to their back catalogue, like the rest of Anthems and that Bunny EP they released just before they split up. And musically, it was a bit like edgy with me because it was such a radical departure from like the hardcoreness of Gallows, with Frank replacing his like trademark hardcore yelp for a more melodic and actual singing style vocal line. With each new song from the album though, I warmed more and more to it. So you had Handsome Devil's Club, you had Riot Song, and Beat Your Diamonds. Warmed more and more to it, and saw this as a really good, really easy listening summer record. And it's weird when you say like a summer record. For me, when I say about Spycatcher, it's like a really chilled, laid-back kind of album. Spycatcher for me is more of like an autumn, winter kind of album. I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like if you listen to enough music, you kind of understand what it is I'm trying to not describe. But Anthems is definitely more like a summer album. Handsome Devil's Club has Frank at his lewdest since Orchestra of Wolves. He's got a lyric in there like, "Give me a good girl down on her knees." And all the while, Jim is just in the background slamming down their Manic Street Preacher style stadium rock riffs, just casual like. Riot Song has one of the biggest and most anthemic choruses Frank's ever written, and Beat Your Diamonds is his wonderfully chill, like Queens of the Stone Age style jam that lyrically is very indicative to the whole project. There's a line in the chorus which is dive in, someone's gotta throw caution to the wind. A little bit on the nose, a little bit cringy, but then music tends to be. And it's just all about how, for both Jim and Frank, at this point in their lives, their career was defined on hardcore music and just overall being quite brutal chaps. So with Pure Love, it gave them the chance to just take a big risk and see if it paid off. And I'll probably talk about it a little bit more, but I feel like it should have took off more than what it actually did. But like I said, we might get back to that in a bit. When you get the rest of the album then, following those, 4 single releases. There is more of that big, like, anthemic rock sound, and I can see why there'd be claims that it can be seen as a sellout record, but something just feels so genuine about this. Again, I can't put my finger on what it is. There's the opening line from Bury My Bones, like, as cringe as it is to outwardly say everything we've done at this point, just, we don't want to do it anymore, essentially. It's not going to do anything. The fact that they left both their bands for this effectively fresh start, write music they both want to listen to. I don't know, or both want to write, sorry. I don't know how big Hope Conspiracy and Suicide File got in the States. I don't think they got too much of a presence over here in Blighty. But Gallows, turn of like the teens or tens, whatever they're called, the 2010s, the turn of the decade, Gallows, I'm going to confidently say they were the biggest hardcore band this country had. And with Great Britain and all the furore about it and the Warner Brothers contract, I feel like they were starting to break America as well. And for Frank to leave all that behind because various different reasons, it's very much a thing of he didn't want to write Gallows-like music anymore. And obviously, I don't know Frank personally, but seeing what he's like on social media and in interviews and that sort of thing, he wasn't going to do anything by half, so he wasn't going to have Pure Love as a side project. It was going to be his main focus, and for that he can't have two main focuses, so he binned off the biggest hardcore band in the country, which takes some fucking balls. I've lost where I was. There we go. Given the output of Frank Carter and Rattlesnakes, well, going back to that point of whether or not it's a sellout or not, the output from Frank Carter and Rattlesnakes, particularly Modern Ruin and so far what I've heard from End of Suffering, it's hard to argue that this isn't the kind of music that Frank wanted to write at the time, the more like summer going, big rock kind of sound. And as cliche as it sounds, I think the album title is pretty bang on the money. Anthems is a collection of really big, really powerful songs that I know personally I break out at every chance I get over the summer. You've got Life of the Party bangers like The Hits and Handsome Devil's Club, Scared to Death, and Riot Song. And you've got like the after party chillers like March of the Pilgrims, Anthem, and Heavy Kind of Chain. There's a lot of influences on Anthems. You've got the likes of Manic Street Preachers, which I alluded to before, Oasis, Queens of the Stone Age as well, and sort of like a post-American Idiot Green Day I'll throw in there as well. But for fans of part, if you want to like try and get into this, I've selected Basement. Oh fuck, hit the table. Basement, they are a kind of indie-led emo band. I listened to their album last year and really enjoyed it beside myself. So yeah, Basement in there. Lowland Atlantis, which are another band who I always feel that should have got more from the UK. They were a bit, I don't think they just quite succeeded, but in a similar way to Pure Love. But yeah, Lowland Atlantis and Arctic Monkeys were, they're sort of like mid-period where they were in between being really, really spacey recently and just outwards garage rock from back in the day. In terms of like why I don't think Pure Love lasted, the fact that in Rattlesnakes right now, this is all speculation, I've got no idea personally, but in Rattlesnakes at the moment, Frank is forever going on about the relationship and friendship he's got with Dean Richardson, his like cohort in Rattlesnakes. He, admittedly, social media even back then wasn't quite at the peak it is now, but I very rarely see him make any reference to Pure Love or Jim, who he worked with on this. And something must have happened because this is sort of music that I feel like would have done really well, and for whatever reason it was stopped in a blink of an eye. They had a couple of songs on the back burner which they released for the Bunny EP, did a short farewell tour which ended up becoming my very first gig with Pup, as I said to you earlier. And yeah, it just seems to like fizz off pretty darn quick. So I'd always like to know why it'll fizzle away, but the fact that we've got Rattlesnakes now, he does seem much happier now. So power to him. That's what's important, to make sure you're happy in your music. But yeah, as I was before going off on that little tangent, if you go for Basement, go for Lone Atlantis, or if you go for Arctic Monkeys, that mid-period sort of thing, go and check out Anthems by Pure Love. It was their debut album, it was their only album, and it came out in 2013. Right then, something a little bit more different now from Lags, or if you want to be less personal, I wonder how I get his name, like Laurent Barnard. I'm going to stick with that because otherwise I'll just be mispronouncing his name for about an hour. Known colloquially as Lags, he was part of a sludge metal supergroup called Krokodil, and they released their debut album. Again, I want to call it Nakash because it's spelled Nachash. Nakash, I don't think it is. I'm going to go Nakash because I can. Nakash was a debut album of Krokodil, like I said, a sludge metal supergroup featuring Lags as well as members from SikTh, Liber Necris, Hexes, a Metastasis, and eventually even Slipknot. Keep hitting the microphone with my beard, that's fine. By far and away, they are the heaviest band from the ones I'm going to look at for this week, and I think they kind of have to be when they are named after a drug that can literally dissolve your skin. So, like when they first started trying to look up the band Krokodil, gets you some very horrific images of what the actual drug Krokodil can do to a person. So don't do that. Make sure you put band at the end of it, and you'll find like a Metallum link. Do that. And I think a lot of the heaviest comes from the fact that they are led by a 3-guitar attack from Lags, Daniel P. Carter, and at the time of Nakash, Alessandro Venturella. And because they've got 3 guitarists, you can guarantee that there's going to be riffs for days. On A Life Lived in Copper but Painted in Gold, the opening riff is a sickening like bass back riff that sounds like it was ripped straight off a Gajira B-side. On Sobek, which is the penultimate song, the high-end melody played over the top of everything could easily rub shoulders with anything Jens is doing in Meshuggah. And the early Mastodon influences just run rampant throughout the album. And although it is rooted in that very early Mastodon era sludge, and I'm thinking Remission or Leviathan, Krokodil still haven't quite shied away from incorporating a bit more melody into their overall racket. The opener, Shatter, has a huge building chorus that and a real relaxed vibe that goes into the solo. Porcelain Bones does something very similar before bursting into a just snap neck blast beat that sounds like it was conjured up from the pipes of the porcelain throne of the devil himself. I was quite proud of that line. And The Collapse is the closest thing I've ever heard to a ballad in sludge metal. I just fucking adore that song, The Collapse. It's so flipping over buses level of heavy and good. Then there is like the little sparse bits of experimentation. There's a few instances, particularly the ones I heard at least, in Reptilia Familia and Sunriders. Makes use of like a sitar sounding instrument, some kind of like string instruments that sounds along that sort of line. And it does fit in with the whole vibe and mood that comes with sludge. Like I'm thinking of like that NOLA era, or NOLA scene thing. And I'd like to have seen them, or heard them, I should say, go all in at some point with that sort of guitar, sitar thing, like a very psychedelic Louisiana swamp style sitar kind of noise. But that's just me. I obviously didn't want to do that. The Mastodon comparison has been made in damn near every review I've seen, and like even the fact that I'm fucking doing it as well. And although a lot of it does come from those low-end clashing riffs from the 3 guitarists, I think a lot of it also comes from the drums as well. It's no surprise, it's Dan Ford, he of SikTh fame. he does inject a very progressive element into the rhythm, whether it's little fills or little crash rides here and there. He is constantly adding something to the erratic nature of the music in a similar kind of way to, I want to make sure I get his name right, is it Brand, the drummer at Mastodon, the way he does that as well? And yeah, I think it just all fits in rather nicely. This is an album you could easily lose yourself in. It is 45 minutes of bone-rattling riffs, which didn't lose me as much as I thought it was. Sludge isn't something that I go for a lot, because it tends to get a little bit too doomy for my particular liking. The latter half does act as a recovery period for the absolute brutality of the first half of the album. There's a lot more melody, a bit more stretched out notes, to the point where I think the second half can sit further in that doom metal circle. Precisely the sort of thing I just said I didn't like. Good job, notes. For album number 2, which I wrote these notes down before, going on and seeing Daniel P. Carter's Instagram last night. He did like a Q&A sort of thing, and someone asked him, is Krokodil still a thing? To which he posted like a little teaser of a demo, and it sounds fucking heavy as shit. So maybe a Krokodil album 2 sometime in the future. I don't know, I'd be very excited. But for me personally, I break that sitar out, whatever it is. If it's a sitar, if it's some other, if it's just a weird effect on like a normal guitar, break that out, go absolutely hammer it. Like I said, maybe like a full psychedelic dreamscape kind of song with it. Play around with cleans, like they had Biffy Clyro frontman Simon Neil in for the song Sunriders, and I think he did a really good job of like contrasting all the brutality with his style of cleans. So I'd like them to do a little bit more of that. And yeah, just overall pushed the boat out a little. I read one review that sort of said it does get quite repetitive, the low-end guitars, and gosh, I've forgotten his name. Simon writes like low-end vocals, and like I said, for 45 minutes, I didn't quite feel it, but I could understand the point they're trying to make. So yeah, just experiment a bit more, which I know goes against everything anyone ever says about an album ever, but I like to be different. For fans of, I know we keep going on about it, I know everyone keeps going on about SikTh to get out of the way now. Mastodon are the really easy one you can compare to Krokodil. Also Condra, a newer kind of band to do this as well. And I believe they're pronounced Lyn. They are from Copenhagen. They do a very like expansive post-metal form of sludge metal, and they sound fucking incredible. But it's spelled L-L-N-N. And I think it's pronounced Lyn, so either way, if not, L-L-N-N. Mastodon, Condra, Lyn, or L-L-N-N, just to be fucking difficult. It is sludge metal, but a very interesting form of sludge metal, full of riffs, full of just demonism, if that's a thing. Any of those, go for the debut album from Krokodil. It is called Nakash. It came out in 2014. Split difference. Came out in 2014. It was a side project, one of the many side projects of Lags. And yeah, it's actually quite brilliant. So definitely check it out if you like things on the heavier side. Right then, on to the second of the two Carter brothers to feature in Gallows over their lifetime. A few years after, so where's the best person? Steph stayed with the band without Frank for about a year. He was part of the first album they did with Wade. And yeah, I think he left very shortly after that self-titled album came out in 2012. Took a bit of a break, and I think he focused more on producing at that time. But eventually came back in 2015 with a pledge-funded album called The Death of Everything New. It was part of a band called The Ghost Riders in the Sky. It ended up being their only album. I'll talk about it a bit more in a second. And they are equal parts UK, equal parts US of A. And they are UK Americana blend of rock. I was precisely trying not to say bland, because it's anything but. And that cross-Atlantic vibe to the album, it's there in abundance. You've got, obviously, well, it's led by Steph and his wife, Gillian, who is an American. So that blend of US Americana and that UK punk rock is just sprawled throughout the entire album, to the point where it is actually really hard to pick out points where it is, this is the punk part and this is the Americana part, because the album just does such a good job of blending and intertwining those two genres together. As an example, Wastelands has this like hard hitting drums that carry the song, and lyrically it just sounds so pissed off and pessimistic, plus the solo absolutely slams. So that's all like the punk rock things you want in it, but with the dual vocals from Gillian and Paul Taylor, they just fit so well and effortlessly into the country side of things. And it's all backed up by like a really subtle brass section and a spaghetti western style guitar riff, and it sounds fucking amazing. Similarly, on What Could Be, the intro guitar scratch and drum roll, you expect like a really dirty, really filthy, maybe bass-led punk track. And instead, it's this like dark country rock song that has this incredible, like surprisingly uplifting in the grand scheme of things, trumpet-fronted chorus. And it's fucking brilliant. The only time it really bucks that trend of blending the two genres together is when it fully embraces its country Americana side in the songs A Haunting and Dark Love. A Haunting has the male vocalist, Paul Taylor. It almost adopts like a Mike Ness blues punk style drawl, and that's all backed up by Gillian, and as well as Gillian, who I'll talk about a bit more with Gillian in a sec. But there's another amazing guitar solo as well. Just an entire solo section just is produced and written so well. And Dark Love has Gillian take center stage to show her like lyrical chops, and she's got such a powerful voice at often the most delicate moments. She's done a great job in here, and I was quite surprised. I tried to look her up on Discogs, and as far as I'm aware, this is like the only major thing she's done, which is quite surprising because she's, like I said, really strong vocal line in her, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in a bit, but they've got a new band called Lioness, and I hope that gives it a chance to show off a little bit more on that too. But yeah, get to that when we get there. Other standout tracks from the album include Eye of the Day, which is this dark, sultry, stalker kind of song that sounds like the breakup scene from a very romantic drama. Opening song, The Trip, which I think would have tricked people, probably tricked me back in the day. Tricked people for like the overall mood and aesthetic of the album, because while musically it is one of the more uplifting sounding songs on the album, lyrically quite bleak, and it's a recurring theme in the album. It's still got the punk rock cynicism of Steph quite up front throughout the album. And the final track, which is the title track, it is a 7.5 minute opus that starts off with a very somber ballad kind of thing, akin to like The Haunting and Dark Love, before it explodes into the Steph Carter show, and it is this bombastic rock solo to see off the song and the album, and it sounds just gigantic. I had a lot of fun with this album. I did not give it enough time back in the day. Like I said, it was a pledge-funded album that I put money to, and I've got like a signed copy of the album, and it's very, very nice and pretty. The artwork on the CD and on the front is just incredible. I love that kind of art style. And yeah, for whatever reason, I barely gave it time of day back in the day. I'm glad doing this. I can go back to it because it is I think maybe second to Anthems. It might be. Yeah, I still prefer Anthems, but apart from that, second favorite album from everything I've listened to for this like project kind of thing. Special. That's what I was trying to think of. Special project special, whatever you want to go for. It ended up being like the one and only album for Ghost Riders in the Sky, which is a massive shame. I'm fairly certain I've seen somewhere Steph label Ghost Riders in the Sky. He was very proud of this project and was very sad to see it go. And like I said, I can't blame him. His music in here is fucking incredible. And the dual vocals of Paul and Gillian just work so very well. I know I'm about 90% certain Gillian had some health problems, which I may have made a factor in this, and by that I think she needed to have back surgery. Bless her heart. So I think that might have like put things in perspective, and maybe that's why maybe a reason why Ghost Rising Sky didn't carry on, because it just wasn't viable for her at the time. Which, you know, as I was saying, similarly to Frank, you need to put yourself first at sometimes. But I think musically as well, it might have had a factor as well, because as good as this album is, it is too punk for people who are fans of Americana, and I think it's too Americana for people who are a fan of punk rock. And like, you look at more latter day Social Distortion kind of stuff, when they started introducing this more like country and blues kind of stuff, people don't go for those albums anymore. They go back to the old school, like Mommy's Little Monster, you know, like the self-titled and the follow-up, whose name I can't remember. Like the album that has Story of My Life. No, Social Distortion was the self-titled, and Mommy's Little Monster was the next one. It's been a while since I've gone in social. Yeah, I think a lot of that as well, just musically, it didn't really fit into a category. It was very niche musically, but yeah, it's a fucking shame that it didn't carry on, because I thought this album was a fucking delight. They have since formed, so Steph, Gillian, and a few others who, I apologize, I can't remember any of their names. Steph and Gillian have gone on to make a new band called Lioness, which, as far as I'm aware, nothing concrete's been released yet. But there's been little previews and such on Instagram, like Instagram stories and that kind of thing. And I cannot wait for actual music to be released stuff, because so far it is massive riffs, like really chunky riffs to come out of it. Haven't seen too much of what it sounds like lyrically, but again, about 90% certain Gillian is fronting it again. And yeah, I'm very, very excited to hear what that sounds like. It's Lioness, Lyoness. But I'm not talking about it right now. If you want to go for Ghost Rising in the Sky, I recommend it if you are a fan of Alex Jordan and Company. I'm going to throw Nervous in there as well, because although they don't have a lot of the Americana style, well, the Americana end of things, the alt rock and like borderline indie punk stuff that Nervous do can translate quite well into Ghost Rising in the Sky. And as well as that, the Beautiful South, I fucking adore the Beautiful South, though I don't feel that as a negative statement at all. But the dual-led male-female vocals, Beautiful South at times did experiment with, well, they were an indie rock band to begin with, but they experimented with brass instruments and just overall like little country things here and there. I think you can slam them in there as well. So yeah, Alex Jordan and Company, Nervous, and Beautiful South. If you go for any of them, give this a go. It is a really, really fun, really, really chill album. I keep saying the word chill. I need to open up the thesaurus and get better words. But Ghost Riders in the Sky, their debut album, well, the only album, was called The Death of Everything New. It came out in 2015, and yeah, definitely worth your time. Again, right then, on to the penultimate album for this special then. Lost my place. So when Frank left Gallows in 2011, almost forgot, there was lots of rumours, lots of speculation, but in the end, the replacement was announced as Wade MacNeil, then very, very recently formerly of Alexisonfire. Now, as it turns out, around about the time he was joining Gallows in this like frantic Watford-based punk rock tornado that ripped through the UK, he was also working on his own side project called Black Lungs, and the album ended up becoming Pagan Holiday, and it came out Halloween 2015. It is the second album from Wade and his Ontario, Canada-based project, and it's very, very hardcore and a little bit tinged with horror punk in there as well. He made it initially when he was like during his core time in Alexisonfire, I believe like 2008, 2007, back then. And on that first album, which was called Send Flowers, it was very folk rock. Imagine if Frank Turner used an electric guitar, is the best way I can describe it, I think. To the point where I think it could even rub shoulders with the Ghost Riders in the Sky with Steph, but there we are. Album number 2, Pagan Holiday, does not quite sound like that at all. I keep hitting the fucking mic stand with my beard pellet, and I'm very, very angry. So if you keep hearing it ticking, it's a little bead I put at the end of my beard to try and look edgy, and I'm sorry. With album number 2 from Black Lungs, Wade, like I said, went down a slightly more different route. It is possibly, well, it's easily the most Gallows album from any of these side projects. It is a blistering effort of hardcore punk. The opening title track sounds like it is that middle ground between Orchestra of Wolves and Grey Britain. Even more so than what Goldust did. And Goldust literally came out between Orchestra of Wolves and Grey Britain. And it's a very rare song, so if you haven't heard it, go look for it. It's fucking great. It is like I said, it's a very gritty, very fast-paced OG hardcore album where Wade, at every single syllable, sounds like he is spewing blood because it's just friendly. The only time it really lets up is on the song Valley of the Dolls, which takes on a bit more of a post-punk approach. And the closing song, For the Love of Ivy, is I think it's Gun Club cover. So yeah, a little bit different in the overall aesthetic of the album Pagan Holiday, but the rest of it though, tear your eyes out. It was, like I said, it was promised 4 years prior, in 2011, but with respect and in defense of Wade MacNeil, 2011 got very busy for him very, very quickly. He left. So Alexis on Fire split up. He was working on this in the background, ended up joining Gallows and started touring and writing with them all but immediately. He got a radio gig in Toronto. At some point, I don't know if this happened the same sort of time or not, but he started writing music for video games and movies. He's also collaborated with a friend of his, I believe his name was Matty Matheson, who is a YouTube cook, or just a cook. He's got his own book out, which I'm desperately trying to buy. So yeah, he was quite busy around about this sort of time. So you can forgive him for not releasing his side project band directly when he said he was going to. And in hindsight, it does sort of set up this like born-again punk image that Wade has had since joining Gallows. He, like, you see him in press shots now or anything with Gallows, just on his Insta. He's it's either tartan, black, or denim. He's got a cross tattooed on his head now. He dyes his hair all different kind of colours. It is a mid-career renaissance for Wade. And I think if Pagan Holiday came out when everyone was expecting it in 2011, that transition into Gallows probably wouldn't have been as daunting as it was from a fan point of view, because I know I'll first admit, because he wasn't Frank, and like I said, back when I was younger, everything had to be Frank and Gallows, blah, 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 blah. It just would have eliminated all of it, because it would have shown that he can be out and out punk rock when he needs to be. And in the end, the self-titled Gallows album did that anyways, and Wade is fucking brilliant as a frontman of Gallows, and I love him very dearly. I'm kind of wondering, having said all that, if ideas and tidbits from the Pagan Holiday sessions made into future Gallows releases. And I spoke about like the familiarity of Pagan Holiday being like a very Gallows-y kind of song. But on like the chord progression as well, on the song California Evil, the second verse opens with, I believe the line is, you need to be afraid, and then the rest of the song continues. The way he sings that line, and just literally the lyrics of the line in general, very, very similar to the opening line of Mystic Death from Desolation Sounds, album number 4. And again, chord progression wise, it's very Gallows-like. So it's not a knock against Wade or Gallows. I think it'd be super interesting, actually, if it turns out that a lot of ideas from Black Lung or Pagan Holiday sessions made into subsequent releases with Wade fronting Gallows. I think it'd be pretty fucking cool, actually. But again, if hindsight's a beautiful thing. Hindsight's 2020. Had this come out in 2011, and this sort of music style was like bleeding into subsequent Gallows albums or Gallows releases, yeah, there wouldn't have been as much. There was a lot of celebration when Wade got announced, but as with everything, there's always that level of skepticism. But I think that would have quashed a lot of it pretty darn quick. Wade's natural rasp just works so effortlessly in punk music. Whereas the debut album, like I said, it's called Send Flowers, it feels more adjusted to like summer festivals and relaxing and, you know, just like hanging out with your friends, being all like happy and shit. Pagan Holiday is more suited for dive bars and headbutting walls and not being able to feel, which more my thing. It's not as lasting as the other albums. It is sub 30 minutes, and although in the moment it is a frantic mess that is very, very enjoyable, as soon as it's over, you are ready to move on, which bit of a shame, but still a worthwhile punk album if you're into that kind of thing. I'd recommend it for fans of Comeback Kid, The Ghost of 1000. I'm going to throw Murder Dolls in there as well because I feel like it's got a definite horror punk element just like strewn away in there as well. But yeah, Comeback Kid, Ghost of 1000, Murder Dolls. Check out Wade MacNeil's side project Black Lungs and their second album Pagan Holiday, and it came out in 2015. Okay, so let's get on to the last album we're going to look out for this special. I imagine things will resume as normal next week, but I can't promise anything anymore. The band are called Funeral Shakes. The album is called Funeral Shakes. It came out last year in 2018, and it is the side project of Gallows drummer Lee Barratt. They, again, Watford-based, and they play a version of punk and roll, which not a genre I ever thought I'd talk about. Initially, it consisted of members of Nervous, Smoking Hearts, and of course, Lee from Gallows, the boy himself. And initially, the way I described Funeral Shakes as imagine if the Sex Pistols covered the Beatles. The saunter and swagger of an old school rock and roll bop, which is a really fun word to say, combined with a snarl and bark of classic British punk. I really wish I knew English. Lyrically cynical as well. Hal has the chorus, I was doing just fine until you crept into my life. Lovebirds has Lovebirds are flying overhead, singing a heart out about someone else, them feels, and just all the start to finish of the song Circles. It's fucking great. It was admittedly an album that took a little bit of getting used to and a little bit of time to sink in, despite the energy of the overall composition and even the lead single, actually, Over You. It just took some time getting used to. I don't know what it was. By this point, I feel like I was very open with musical taste. I wasn't expecting Lee to do like another hardcore album, but I don't know what it was that like initially clicked me off, because individually everyone shines on the album. M and Simon make some really fantastic riffs for the record. Calvin, the frontman, just sounds incredible. He really brings in that punk, like Mike Ness kind of vibe to it all. And Lee's drumming could stand with anything he's ever put into a Gallows song as well. But like I said, it just didn't sit right with me for the first couple of listens. My feeling is maybe because the genre of punk and roll can limit people. Maybe limit them a bit too much at the start, because it is quite a niche genre to begin with. And when you do start giving the album a few more listens, you do start to realise that the most interesting parts of the album was when it stretches the rock and roll side of things. Like Howl is a bit more of like a surfer rock kind of thing. Safari is the, like I've dubbed it, the Beatles discovering indie rock portion of the album. And the closing song, You're So Bad, sounds like the first dance of Divorce. If you finalise it, listen to You're So Bad. There we go. But give it a couple of listens though. I do think it's worth time, and you'll be smashing out the chorus to Over You, Lightning, and Howl in no time, and appreciating just how good a song Circles is. If I collated all the good things I've got to say and think about this album, it would all be condensed into Circles. It is the most immediate song from the album. Lyrically wonderful. It is antagonistic. It is pessimistic. It just bumps the pace up straight away. And to scream, I'm looking like a 10, you're looking like a 2, is one of life's few remaining pleasures, I believe. And if nothing else, Funeral Shakes, when they're on, like in the music videos and when they're on stage, they have a uniform. And it's like an old-fashioned, like rockabilly shirt. I know Calvin does like Pompadour Sarah, but just those shirts, having like a uniform like that, it doesn't happen all that often. But from this, I realised I actually really enjoy it when people do that. It's such like a really subtle thing, and it just adds to the idea of conformity in the album, or in the bands, I should say. And yeah, a bit more of a throwback, that one, but I appreciate that. I appreciate you doing this and wearing a fun shirt. Having said all that, both M. Foster and Lee Barratt have since left Funeral Shakes. Bit of a shame. But with that, they've got new blood in from Jack Kenny and Harris Ali. It's a bit more of a coherent lineup, which makes sense because M, bless her cottons, she's got about 15,000 projects on the go at the moment. And Gallows are playing Slam Dunk. Oh, it's only a few weeks away now. Gallows are playing Slam Dunk and I don't know how much in advance Slam Dunk would have been trying to get Gallows back together to play the festival. But a more coherent lineup will hopefully be able to allow Funeral Shakes to explore that punk and roll further and the ideas that they've conjured up already and how they can like expand all that. Because I genuinely think they can break with this style of music and be... Well, like Bronx did it and Rocket from the Crypt did it to a certain extent over in the States, so I think Funeral Shakes can do that kind of thing over here in Blighty. I don't know why I say Blighty a lot on this podcast. I very rarely, if at all, say it in actual real life, but Blighty. Go for this. I've mentioned a minute ago, Rocket from the Crypt fans, check out Funeral Shakes as well as Turbo Negro. Maybe not, they are a little bit more brash on the lyrics, but overall, the composition-wise, Turbo Negro is a good shout as well, and Social Distortion. Go for any of them. Give Funeral Shakes a go. A very just fun punk and roll record. It does take a little bit getting used to, but it is stretching. It is a lot of fun anyways. And the debut self-titled album came out in 2018. And yeah, check it out if you're into any of those things. Any of the sort of things that I've just tried to say out loud. With that then, that will do it for this ultra very special episode of the Desolation Sounds podcast. Hopefully, order will be resumed next week. It's been a weird month, and I apologise for that deeply, sincerely. Just trying to think what we've got scheduled for next week. We've got Blood Command. I'm pushing on my nose. Got Blood Command. We got what are they called? Grand Magus, Kevin Nichols, and another album that I can't remember the name of that I actually really enjoyed. Why can't I remember it? I won't look it up. But you've got a mystery album as well that I can't think of. All that should be coming up next week, along with all the latest news and ting from the last 2 weeks. Hopefully as well, if I remember to write it. A live review as well from UK metalcore / new metal act Borders and their album release show in Lincoln very recently. So I hope to write that up and give it to you next week. If you like this kind of format, just dissecting a band like this, do get in touch and recommend a band, and I'll give it a go. This was fun. They showed me a lot of albums that I'd never heard of before, and they were all pretty damn good. Don't you think? I think if I had to choose favourite, like I said, Anthems, closely followed by Ghost Riders in the Sky. But hopefully there's something here for everyone, and I have done members of Gallows a little bit of justice in all their side projects where they just like to have a bit of fun. Usual social media ports to come say hi at Desolation Pod. But until next week, I hope you all have a lovely week and enjoy the sun, because I know I won't. Being goth in the sun is very difficult. Goodbye.